Hello and welcome to this new video where I'm going to introduce you to some of the most interesting features of Riffendium X. This new version was built from scratch, so all new code, all new recordings. There are a few other videos on our channel that showcase sounds and the most important details, so I'll try to be brief with those and get to the most interesting part as quickly as I can. When you open it, you are greeted with a welcome page which shows the currently used main guitar. At the bottom, you see this Rig Presets menu. Rig presets are special sound combinations of guitar type, stomps, amps, and effects, which are also finalized using an impulse response that is loaded in the master convolution effect. This impulse response not only adds ambience but also adds an EQ curve which finalizes the sound. This impulse response must only be used with the corresponding rig or sound settings, unless you feel adventurous and want to experiment. My advice is, if you want to start a sound from scratch, remove the rig impulse and then do all the required tweaking. Or you can click on the last entry of the menu to create a variation of the rig, which at this point will not include the rig impulse anymore. When I mentioned guitar type earlier, I did it because Riffendium X includes 12 guitar types, with corresponding pickup positions, a bit like modus and forma, ambient electric. With Riffendium X, you can have one guitar sound that will work for all the included loops. And this is the second new thing, all the included loops and recordings can be used at any time to compose your arrangement. You can have one guitar sound performing all the parts you need. Speaking of guitar sound, you can either adjust your guitar parameters, your stomp effects, and amp settings, and reverb or delay. But you can also bypass all that and use your favorite amp simulation without having to load a separate instance of Riffendium. And speaking of loops, we have more than 300 loops organized in a browser, each recorded in all modes of all major scales. You can have 8 loops per scene, and 8 scenes in total. So you can use any of the 300 loops, or articulations as we call them, and have up to 64 per patch. You are no longer tied up to the slices that came with one loop recording. So, how do we use Riffendium X? Let's start with an empty sequence. You can see we have 2 sequencers here in the sequence page, or 2 sequence lanes, the high and the low sequences. Think of it this way, left and right hand for a pianist, or bass and highs for a guitarist. You can use one sequencer only if you wish, but if we think of it this way, it becomes easier and also more creative. So, I can load a series of power chords on the low sequence. The magnifying glass opens the browser. I go to power chords. Select the duration I need. I go for 1/8. Press OK. Then these buttons will set my articulation region in the sequence. I can remove it by clicking it again or by pressing the X. But I can also populate all the steps by clicking this button. Now it sounds like this. I can adjust the velocity, which will not affect the volume, but it will trigger different samples. In this case, I will have noises or ghost notes, the soft mutes, the louder mutes, and the soft open and loud open. You see this pop-up window telling me where my velocity layers start and end. I could prevent this window from popping up by clicking on the I here. But I will keep it on because it is handy. Now, I can adjust the first velocity. Then by clicking here, all the steps for this articulation will have the same velocity. So, I don't need to go to each of them. This saves time. If I play the red keys from E1, I can trigger the sequence. And if I play legato, the sequence will flow forwards without restarting from the beginning when I change pitch. Also, since I set the root note to C, when I play all C major notes, my power chords will be appropriate for the C major scale. Notice the B note here for instance. Its fifth is raised up. Let's replace the power chords with single notes, like so. Now, by toggling the duration button here, I can reveal the pitches for each step. I can change some of the pitches to create a simple riff like so. I'll make sure the pitches follow my major scale by going to the options page and set the behavior to follow scale. Now, whatever key I press, the riff will stay in C major. Now let's add some other power chords on the high sequence. Let's load them the same way, but now I will distribute them in specific steps, like accents. You see that in these steps I have two regions at the same time, which I don't want. I can delete these regions one by one, but there's a better way. Now, by pressing this button here, whenever I place a region on a high step, it will make space for it on the low step. So now, I can set my accents. If I played the sequence here, there wouldn't be much benefit to using the high sequence like this, but by clicking on this button here, I will enable the unequal notes mode. Now, the pitch of the two sequences is independent of each other. You see the keyboard is split into two colors. I can set the pitch for the high sequence by pressing the yellow keys. Then I press a red key to start the loop and also to set the pitch for the low sequence. If I play legato on the red keys, you see, the low notes change while the higher notes stay put. Now I can keep a red key steady and change the yellow keys. Now the high notes are changing while I have a pedal note on the bass. I can also adjust the octave for the high sequence to be higher or lower as desired. So this is quite interesting. It's another big new feature for Riffendium X. When it comes to using Riffendium X in a DAW, I would recommend playing live as in sync as possible, anticipating the notes a bit before the note change. But the first red key you press needs to be spot on time, so I would quantize it. Also, to achieve a better sync, I would adjust the region or track delay to -2 or so to allow the pick noise to happen at the right time. Now the part is more in sync. This also helps for some loops that have a more laid-back feel to be more on the beat. Riffendium X includes many short articulations with which you can compose your riffs. For instance, here's a snapshot with a sequence that includes only short notes, like the slide articulation and some power chords. I can remove the articulation and clear the sequence layers using the X's here. I can also reset both sequences at once. Let's clean up the sequence using this button here. But Riffendium X also has some longer articulations, full riffs, and rhythmics. Let's listen to a few. We open the browser and click on each category and the names in the lists. You get a preview of all the velocity layers included in the sound source. You can also see the names here. This info text here tells you something useful about the mappings. Some articulations, like the blues connectives, will not have all modes recorded because of the blues nature of the loop. Some others will tell you the chord types, dynamics, or how many different parts are mapped on which velocity layer. So dive into the browser and see. We've recorded a lot of articulation variations that should be enough for most compositions. Let's load a long rhythmic, for instance, on the high sequence. Let's stay in equal notes mode, so I will trigger both sequences with one key, even though now there's nothing on the red sequence. You see, if I change the pitch at any time, the note will only change when the region starts, not before. So, if I want to change chords at a different time division, I need to split the region. To do so, let's tell Riffendium I want to split the region that starts on this step. Click the Split button here. Then let's move to the step where I want the split to happen. Then click the scissors. You see, the region is now split, but when I play, the rhythmic continues as before. Now I can change the chord at this point while the rhythmic continues. If I want it to happen also on the second bar, I just need to press this button here, which will copy the first bar onto the second bar. Now I can have all the changes I need. Let's add a connective articulation. Connective articulations are loops best used at the end of a part to connect it to the next part. Let's load one and place it on the last 1/4 note. Here. This is a way to add interesting variations to your parts. You can randomize the articulation like so, giving you a different connective. This is a fast way to test a few. But you can also save this version on scene A. Copy the scene. Move to scene B. Paste the sequence and articulations. And then change the connective on scene B. Then you can use the scene key switches to toggle between the two scenes. You can also create variations by using the pitch bend when this option is active. If you've loaded an articulation that has velocity-mapped variations, you can use the pitch bend to trigger the different velocity layers. Once you've set up a sequence, but you're not too sure about it, you can also generate a sequence variation by clicking here. It can range from subtle to very dramatic, so see if you hear anything you like. It can provide quite some inspiration when you're feeling stuck. Also, we have a few sequence presets here. And you can hear the sound never changes. You can use any articulations with the same sound throughout the song. In any sound page, you have this button here. It will add a second guitar sound that will play different variations of the same loops. You can set the stereo width in the guitar page, having them more or less separated as you wish. You can also have a different guitar type and amp settings if you wish. Or, if you prefer having the same sound, you can click on this lock button. Now, any parameter you touch for the main guitar will be applied to the double guitar, so you can set 1 amp for both, with the same parameters. Same stomp effects. Regarding the stomp effects, we have 2 slots per guitar, a pre-amp slot, so the stomp is before the amp in the chain, and a post-amp slot. Only the post-amp slot will be stereo. So now I have this double track combination. Let's go back to the sequence page. If I press the dual button here, now the 2 guitars play different things. The main guitar plays the low sequence, and the double plays the high sequence. Now you can arrange different articulations and sequences for each and have 2 guitars playing different parts at once. You can also randomize the whole sequence by clicking here. This can be hit or miss, but sometimes it yields interesting results. Let's try. If you hear something you like, you can edit it. For instance, you can change the sequence starting point using this step cursor here. Then click the Conform button, and the sequence will now start from that specific step you selected. You can also edit the sequence by removing a region you don't need and slide all the following regions to the left, or by inserting an empty step. In the Options page, we have a list of parameters that can be included in the master randomization. You can include the guitar type, the stomps, amp effects, and the sequence, plus articulations. Now you can press the dice and see what Riffendium X comes up with. Sometimes it can be quite unexpected, but experiment with it. It can be fun. Let's load another articulation. This one, as the info text says, has different mappings according to the selected scale option. So, back to the sequence, let's hear it. You see that in the diatonic mode, everything responds normally. But in the Vari 1 mode, the chords sound different. The chord type changes to reflect another type of mapping. And Vari 2 also provides a different mapping, which can be useful in some situations. Back to diatonic. By pressing the root key switches, I can jump to a different major scale on the fly. So, I can mix chords from different scales to suit my song. So this concludes our overview. We have a very detailed user manual that explains everything in depth. You can also ask us questions in the comments. Riffendium X is available now. Thank you for watching. Have a great day. Bye.